Isaac, it's me. I wish I could talk to you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about everything. I just wish I could talk to someone. It's all falling apart here. I can't believe what's happening. Strange. Such a little thing.
The Dead Space remake throws you right into an atmospherically terrifying hellscape that reveals more of its sinister self by the minute. From the very beginning, the player is put into the midst of a distress call stating there is a prominent alien threat aboard a planet cracking ship named the USG Ishimura. The engineer of the USG Kellyan crew, Isaac Clarke, responds to the call to find out it's being made from his girlfriend, Nicole Brennan. And as they approach the ship, events don't appear as they seem, and more of the mystery begins to unfold as the narrative progresses. To be honest, all I thought I was going to do was perform a rescue mission, but it turned into something far more mysterious. And once the player boards the USG Ishimura, the atmosphere and environmental storytelling is one of the elements that hits instantaneously. But the crew of the USG Kellyan is suddenly taken back to reality as one of their own is brutally ripped apart by a necromorph aboard the ship. And at this moment, they know something more sinister is taking place on the ship because not only do they see their crew member die, but they see him being overtaken by force and transformed into a monster. Later on, the players discover where these undead mutated corpses originated from, but what makes these necromorphs even scarier is that they take over a host body by killing them, which leads to a process of reanimation. Throughout this process, an onslaught of delusions fills the mind of the host they're trying to infect. But these delusions don't seem to be coming out of thin air. They actually come from what is known to be a marker or extraterrestrial obelisk that creates necromorphs, and those that come into contact with the marker for an extended period of time will begin to experience those horrific and dazing effects. And as the player, this is where things start to ramp up in the narrative, although most of it is told through text and audio logs. This is a feature I'm not a fan of unless it adds to the overall story being told. In this case, it sort of acts as a replacement altogether. Unfortunately, there are very little to no cutscenes, which, as an avid lover of linear based narratives, is a bit of a shocker. Although this remains true, I've been able to gather a significant amount of lore through the environmental storytelling alone, and the level design is crafted in such a way that lets the player explore and navigate the spaces freely. For example, in the earlier chapters, there are locked doors that you can't access because they require higher security clearance levels, but in the later chapters, the player is able to revisit and unlock them. As I mentioned previously, there are mysteries that are slowly uncovered surrounding the origins of what caused the mass emergency across the USG Ishimura, including the revelation of a religion known as Unitology. Unitology is the belief that the human race was created by an alien agency. Not just any alien agency, though, but a divine one. And as a result, Unitologists aboard the USG Ishimura believe that there will be some sort of reunification in heaven, which is a value upheld by, yet again, the marker. But through the splices of information gathered, the player starts to question whether it was something planned or just a freak mining accident, and the game never lets down on making the player think and piece things together as they walk through the gory and anxiety-inducing corridors of the ship. With the narrative being told this way, gameplay reigns champion through this sci fi horror adventure. This is especially true when maneuvering through long, dark corridors lurking with aggressively oppressing alien foe that seemingly want to rip your head off. More notably, the way they're revealed to us is nothing short of terrifying, and once they get a hold of the player, their deaths aren't pretty. Gore is a staple to this experience, and it's used wisely even in combat when shooting off the limbs of the necromorphs. In other horror games, the head is usually where you'd want to shoot at, but in Dead Space, it completely changes the formula by asking the player to shoot limb by limb in order to surpass encounters. As a result, survival is not guaranteed, and with limited resources to work with, it's challenging to say the least, especially in the later parts of the game. The only thing I wish is that there were more boss like encounters, but this could be an area improved upon in the subsequent sequels. Luckily, weapons and their respective upgrades feel powerful to utilize in combat. From the plasma cutter to the force gun, there are a slew of innovatively designed and crafted weaponry to play with, each of them providing a varying, unique, and quite frankly, unsettling approach to scenarios that the protagonist Isaac Clarke is put in, granting the player choice in how they want to deal with the wide cast of enemy types. This even rings true in the frenetic implementation of sequences in zero gravity, which create disorienting but fun set pieces to traverse through while fending off enemies from every direction. I mean, who doesn't want to fight aliens in space? This is next level combat design, and I was pleasantly surprised that it was all in game and not locked to some QuickTime event like in the Callisto Protocol. This is what happens when the core gameplay loop is driven by tension, and I'm all here for it. But at times, this can be effectively spoiled in minor ways through slight dips in frame rate and microstutters depending on the instance. These frame rate dips aren't anything that will sour the experience on a large scale, but it is something to take note of. For the most part, the frame rate on PC, which is where I play on, rode steadily between 130 and 140 frames per second. Overall, the performance not only exceeded my expectations, but it blew them out of the water by maintaining it when providing the highest level of fidelity. Keep in mind, I played at every setting maxed out with ray tracing enabled. It's simply incredible what they were able to pull off here. And in combination with the setting, the graphics are able to push the level of detail in each environment even under the deathly eerie and low visibility corridors. It comes to no surprise that the lighting is mastered and utilized brilliantly, setting the tone for what lurks in the shadows of the USG Ishimura. I wish I could say the same for the mission structure though, especially when nearing the finale. At around the 12-hour mark, the missions started to feel just a bit too repetitive because a few of them played out relatively similar. Usually, it's due to the large amounts of backtracking you'll do when trying to get the USG Ishimura back into commission. Instead, what they could have done is let the player breathe by giving more time in between missions through different story beats. Maybe this could have created an even separation between gameplay and story, which I would have preferred. But this, in the grand scheme of things, is a minor issue because the story is told effectively despite my personal preference. And even though I have these personal gripes, the ending's satisfying conclusion leaves players wanting more, wondering what happens next in Isaac Clarke's story. Playing Dead Space is like revisiting a best friend that you never had, but you always wish you had, and I can see why people were so excited for the original to be remade because it truly revitalizes the horror genre. I hope this transpires into the trilogy being remade completely, allowing players like myself who never got the chance to experience this well crafted universe for the first time. With that said, the Dead Space remake by EA Motive has raised the bar for what it means to remake a game from the ground up. and invites those who played the original 2008 release back to this universally loved world while welcoming new players to jump into a refreshingly horrifying take on a tale lost in space.